I'm Samantha Wilson, 34, the black sheep who chose combat boots over cocktail parties. Today, I'm back home for my sister Heather's wedding, wearing my military uniform like armor against my parents' disappointment. Alexander and Victoria Wilson never understood why their daughter chose to play soldier instead of following their country club blueprint for success. Little did I know, this wedding reception would transform from my personal nightmare into the most unexpected validation of my life choices. Before I tell you how my sister's wedding turned into the most surprising day of my life, drop a comment about where you're watching from and hit subscribe for more stories about family, resilience, and unexpected moments of triumph. Growing up in Westfield, Connecticut meant pristine lawns, tennis lessons, and expectations higher than our three-story colonial home. My father, Alexander Wilson, built his financial consulting firm from scratch, turning it into a regional powerhouse. Mother, Victoria, complemented his business success with flawless social orchestration. The Wilson name meant something in our circles, and my parents never let us forget it. From day one, I never quite fit the mold. While other girls received dolls, I begged for microscopes and adventure books. My sister Heather, 7 years younger and infinitely more suited to our parents' vision, arrived when I was in second grade. She was everything I wasn't, naturally graceful, socially intuitive, and eager to please. Samantha, why can't you sit properly? Look at how nicely Heather holds her teacup, became the soundtrack of my childhood. By the time I was 12, the pattern was clear. My A+ in advanced mathematics earned a distracted nod, while Heather's participation ribbon in ballet warranted a celebration dinner. Your sister understands the importance of presentation, Mother would say, adjusting my perpetually unruly hair before social gatherings. Connections are what matter in life, not test scores. Father wasn't much different. When I joined the debate team in high school and won regional championships, he missed every competition for Heather's dance recitals. Arguing isn't ladylike, Samantha, he'd remind me. It's admirable you're smart, but intelligence without social grace won't get you far. While I spent my evenings studying, Heather was being groomed to navigate social waters. She attended etiquette classes, joined the right clubs, and learned the art of conversation from Mother's careful coaching. I retreated further into academics and my ROTC program, finding belonging in structure and meritocracy where family offered none. The real explosion came during my senior year. I'd applied to military academies without telling my parents, keeping the recruitment officer's visit secret and completing the congressional nomination process on my own. Princeton acceptance letter in hand, my parents had already planned my Ivy League journey that would lead to law school, a prestigious firm, and eventually marriage to someone from our social circle. I've been accepted to West Point, I announced over dinner, sliding the official letter across our mahogany table. The silence felt eternal. Mother's fork clattered against fine china. This is absurd, Father finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. You're turning down Princeton to play soldier? This is what happens when we give you too much independence. It's not playing. It's serving my country, I countered. Mother dabbed her lips with a napkin. Darling, military service is for people with fewer options. You're a Wilson. We've given you every advantage. You can't possibly think this is appropriate, Father continued. What about your future? Marriage? Children? No suitable man wants a wife who's been around all those soldiers. Heather, 15 and already socially savvy, watched silently, learning exactly how family loyalty ranked against parental expectations. The argument escalated until Father delivered his ultimatum. If you choose this path, don't expect our support. We won't fund self-destruction. I left for basic training without their blessing. Mother sent a cold note. When this phase passes, we'll welcome you home. It wasn't a phase. It was the first authentic decision I'd ever made. Over the next few years, our communication dwindled to holiday calls and obligatory birthday wishes. Each achievement I earned was diminished with Father's consistent, still playing war games, Samantha and Mother's perpetual. Have you considered coming home to use your leadership skills in a proper setting? Meanwhile, Heather thrived as the sole focus of their attention. She attended Vassar, joined the right sorority, and landed an art gallery position through father's connections. Her life unfolded exactly as planned, while mine took me further from their understanding with each promotion and deployment. The United States Military Academy at West Point became more home than I'd ever known. For the first time, my analytical mind, physical stamina, and leadership instincts were assets, not inconveniences to be corrected. The rigorous schedule and clear expectations felt liberating after years of trying to decipher the unwritten rules of my parents' world. "Wilson, you have a natural tactical mind," my combat strategy instructor noted during my second year. "You see patterns others miss." Those patterns became my specialty. I graduated third in my class, choosing intelligence as my branch. The day I received my gold second lieutenant bars, I stood alone among families celebrating together. My parents had sent a generic congratulations card with a modest check, their acknowledgement without approval. My early career moved quickly. I had a talent for analyzing intelligence data and making connections that saved lives. My first deployment to Afghanistan came just 18 months after commissioning. Leading a small intelligence team, I developed a knack for predicting insurgent movements that helped our combat units avoid ambushes. "Lieutenant Wilson doesn't just analyze intelligence, she feels it," my commanding officer wrote in my first evaluation. "Her instincts have directly saved American lives." Those instincts led to an early promotion to captain and selection for advanced intelligence training. While my peers took leaves to visit family, I volunteered for additional assignments, building a reputation for reliability and insight. During my second deployment, our forward operating base came under sudden attack. When communications went down and our commanding officer was wounded, I assumed command, reorganizing our defenses and coordinating a counterattack that ultimately saved the base and nearly 100 American lives. The silver star they pinned on my chest afterward felt heavy. The ceremony was live-streamed, and I searched the screen for my family's names among those watching. They weren't there. Later, Mother called. "We saw you got some sort of medal." "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Heather's been dating the son of Senator Jenkins?" Each promotion came faster than normal. Major at 28. Lieutenant Colonel by 31. Full Colonel before 33. Each step upward was earned through a combination of operational success, strategic thinking, and the ability to make impossible decisions under pressure. The historic moment came after I led a joint task force that neutralized a major terrorist cell while minimizing civilian casualties through a complex intelligence-driven operation. The president himself mentioned the operation in a speech about modern warfare strategy. General Hayden called me to his office personally. "Colonel Wilson, I'm recommending you for promotion to Brigadier General with fast track to Major General." The promotion ceremony took place at the Pentagon. At 33, I became one of the youngest women ever promoted to Major General in American military history. The achievement made military news headlines. That night, I called my parents. "That's quite a promotion," Father said flatly. Though I'm still not entirely clear what generals actually do these days, with all the technology doing the work. Mother added, "Does this mean you'll be behind a desk now? Perhaps you can finally think about settling down. 33 isn't too late to start a family, though you'll need to hurry." I hung up and celebrated instead with the men and women who'd become my real family, fellow officers who understood the sacrifices and challenges I'd overcome. Colonel Jackson, my former commander, raised a toast to Major General Wilson, who never needed anyone's approval to become exceptional. My military family understood what my blood relatives couldn't, that I'd found my purpose. I led elite intelligence teams, shaped military strategy at the highest levels, and mentored younger officers with the guidance I'd never received. My identity as Major General Wilson became complete without the validation I'd once craved from my parents. And then, after years of minimal contact, the thick cream envelope arrived at my office. Heather's wedding invitation, addressed to Ms. Samantha Wilson, not even acknowledging my rank. The oversight felt deliberate, another reminder that in my family's eyes, my achievements existed in a parallel universe they refused to acknowledge. The invitation sat on my desk for 3 days before I opened it. Thick cream paper with gold embossing announced Heather Wilson's marriage to James Anderson at St. Thomas Episcopal Church, followed by a reception at the Westfield Country Club. Exactly the wedding my parents had always envisioned for both their daughters. I was in the middle of overseeing a major intelligence operation when my secure line rang with a Connecticut number. "Sam? It's Heather." Her voice sounded artificially bright. "Did you get my invitation?" "I did. Congratulations." I kept my tone professional, the same one I used with new officers. "So, will you come?" Mom's been planning this forever, and it would mean so much to me. The rehearsed quality of her words was unmistakable. "Tell me about James." I deflected, buying time to decide. "Oh, he's wonderful. He works in finance. We met at the Jenkins summer party. He's very established." The description sounded like mother talking through Heather's mouth. What she didn't volunteer spoke volumes. No mention of his personality, their connection, or what made him special. Just his social acceptability. "I'll need to check my schedule," I said finally. "Things are complicated here. Please try Sam. It's my wedding." For a moment, she sounded like the little sister who once admired me before she learned not to. After we hung up, I stared at the deployment charts on my wall. The timing worked. I could take leave without compromising operations. The question wasn't could I attend, but should I? My aide, Captain Diana Miller, noticed my distraction. "Everything okay, General?" I slid the invitation across my desk. "My sister's getting married." Diana picked it up, noting the address. "Miss Samantha Wilson? Do they not know you're a two-star general?" "They know. They just don't care." Despite my better judgment, I requested the leave. Perhaps some part of me still sought approval, or maybe I just wanted to see if anything had changed. Either way, 2 weeks later I found myself in a high-end boutique, trying to find civilian clothes that didn't make me feel like an imposter. "Nothing feels right," I told the stylist after the 5th outfit. "What do you normally wear when not in uniform?" she asked. The question gave me pause. When was I not in uniform, either literally or figuratively? "I think I'll wear my dress blues," I decided. Not as a statement, but because it was the only formal attire where I felt authentic. The flight to Connecticut felt longer than trips to active combat zones. I rented a car rather than asking for a pickup, delaying the inevitable as long as possible. Our family home looked exactly the same. Pristine white colonial, manicured gardens, American flag displayed with perfect adherence to etiquette, but without the heart of real patriotism. Mother opened the door before I could knock. "Samantha, you're finally here." Her eyes flicked over my casual travel clothes with familiar disappointment. "We expected you hours ago." No hug, no warmth. Just immediate confirmation that I'd already failed to meet expectations. Traffic from the airport, I lied, unwilling to admit I'd parked for 20 minutes gathering courage to walk up the driveway. Father appeared in the hallway. There she is. Still keeping the military haircut, I see. His handshake was business formal. "Are you still playing Army, or have you considered real career options yet?" The dismissal stung despite my preparation for it. "I'm overseeing intelligence operations for 3 continents, Dad." "It's hardly playing." "Yes, well, come in. Your sister's friends are joining us for dinner. Do you have something appropriate to wear?" The evening was excruciating. Heather's bridesmaids, all from her exclusive social circle, asked vapid questions about whether I'd met any eligible officers and if I carried a gun. Father's friends discussed my career as though it were a charitable hobby rather than a distinguished profession. Mother repeatedly explained to her friends that I was between phases in my life. Heather floated through it all, accepting compliments and looking exactly as our parents had groomed her to be, poised, socially flawless, and utterly conventional. Her occasional glances my way held something like pity. When the guests finally left, Heather followed me to my old bedroom, now converted to a generic guest room with no trace of my existence. "I'm glad you came, Sam," she said, hovering in the doorway. "Are you?" I asked, unpacking my uniform for pressing. "Of course. Though." She hesitated. "You're not planning to wear that to my wedding, are you?" I looked up. "This is appropriate formal attire. It's just, people might find it distracting. It's supposed to be my day." The selfishness was so ingrained she didn't even recognize it. What does your fiancé do in the finance world? I changed the subject. Oh, James? Something with international accounts. He travels sometimes. Her vague answer confirmed my suspicion that she knew very little about his actual work. You'll meet him tomorrow at the rehearsal dinner. As she left, I wondered if she'd ever asked him meaningful questions about his life, or if surface appearances satisfied her as they did our parents. I laid out my uniform, fingering the stars on my shoulders and the rows of ribbons that told the story of my service. Each one represented lives saved, missions accomplished, leadership tested in fire. For a moment, I considered packing it away and buying something beige and unmemorable. It would certainly make the weekend easier. But I'd spent my childhood trying to be invisible and my adult life becoming someone worth seeing. I decided that if my family couldn't accept me as Major General Wilson, they didn't deserve Samantha either. Wedding day dawned with military precision, though this operation involved hairstylists and makeup artists instead of intelligence officers. I'd been assigned to help Heather's bridesmaids with anything they needed, which primarily meant fetching champagne and complimenting their matching periwinkle dresses. Samantha, the photographer, wants family photos in 20 minutes, Mother announced, sweeping into the room in her silver Mother of the Bride ensemble. Her eyes landed on my pressed uniform hanging on the closet door. Oh, you really are wearing that? I am, I confirmed, helping a bridesmaid with a stuck zipper. It's just so severe, she sighed. Amelia Jenkins brought her lovely daughter Catherine to the rehearsal dinner. She's single too, but you'd never know it from how she presents herself. The familiar sting of comparison had lost some potency over years of distance. I'm not single because I can't attract a partner, Mother. I've chosen to focus on my career. Yes, well, that choice gets more difficult with each passing year. She patted my cheek in a gesture empty of real affection. 34 is practically middle-aged in the marriage market. Before I could respond, she was gone in a cloud of expensive perfume, leaving the familiar emotional bruise her words always inflicted. The bridesmaids exchanged glances. Is your mom always like that? One whispered when she thought I couldn't hear. I excused myself to change into my uniform, each button and medal a reminder of the world where I was valued, not merely tolerated. The pre-ceremony photographs were a study in careful positioning, with me consistently placed at edges where I could be easily cropped out later. Father barely spoke to me directly, instead making comments about me to the photographer. Our daughter the soldier is home for a visit, he said with a chuckle that carried no warmth. We hardly recognize her without all that camouflage paint. At the church, I noticed a group of impeccably dressed men with unmistakably military bearing among the guests. Something about their posture and haircuts signaled service, but in the chaos of seating arrangements, I didn't have time to investigate further. The ceremony itself was flawless, exactly as Mother had planned. Heather looked genuinely happy walking down the aisle on Father's arm. Her groom, James, was classically handsome with a strong jaw and confident stance. Something about him tickled my memory, but I couldn't place him. From my position in the family pew, I observed rather than participated, an anthropologist studying the rituals of a culture I'd once belonged to. When the minister announced them husband and wife, the applause felt like it belonged to another world, one of certainty and tradition that had rejected me long ago. The country club reception began with cocktails on the terrace. I accepted a glass of champagne and found myself cornered by Mother's friend Judith. Samantha, still in the reserves, are you? Such a unique hobby. I'm active duty, actually. A major general. Her eyebrows lifted. Oh my. Isn't that something? Though it must be mostly administrative work for women, I imagine. Before I could correct her, Father appeared, steering several business associates toward us. Here she is, gentlemen. Our daughter, who chose the unconventional path. Samantha, these are partners from Gladstone Financial. One offered his hand. Impressive uniform. Reserve unit. Active duty, sir. United States Army. Father laughed, placing a hand on my shoulder that felt more restraining than affectionate. Samantha always did prefer pants to dresses, even as a little girl. Wouldn't even wear a tutu for ballet. The men chuckled, and I felt myself being reduced to an amusing anecdote, the daughter with the quirky career that wasn't meant to be taken seriously. As dinner began, I discovered I'd been seated not at the family table, but at a distant arrangement with distant relatives and obligation invites. From across the room, I could see my parents holding court at the head table, Heather and James beside them, creating the perfect family portrait, minus one inconvenient daughter. The slight was deliberate, and for the first time that day, it truly hurt. I'd earned my stars through intelligence, courage, and leadership, qualities my parents might have been proud of if they'd been achieved in a boardroom rather than a war room. As the evening progressed, I circulated minimally, enduring variations of the same conversation, polite inquiry followed by barely disguised dismissal when my actual role became clear. I overheard snippets of my parents' conversations with their friends. Yes, Samantha is still in the military. We keep hoping she'll find something more fulfilling. No husband yet. Her lifestyle makes it difficult to meet appropriate men. Each comment reinforced what I'd always known but never fully accepted. In my parents' eyes, my achievements were embarrassments to be explained away, not successes to be celebrated. By the time the cake was cut, I decided to make an early exit. This mission was a failure, and tactical retreat seemed the only option that preserved my dignity. I finished my champagne and mentally prepared my exit strategy, calculating how quickly I could return to base where my stars actually meant something. I was gathering my things when I overheard my father's voice, louder than usual from several glasses of top-shelf scotch. He stood with a group of his country club friends near the bar, gesturing in my direction. Military leadership is mostly paperwork these days, he was saying. Samantha likes to dress up in her costume, but between us, I think she's just hiding from real competition in the business world. Can't face going head-to-head with people who didn't get their position through government quotas. Mother joined in, her social smile firmly in place. We've tried to be supportive, but it's difficult when your daughter is playing war games instead of building a family. All those medals and ribbons, like a Girl Scout with too many badges. Laughter rippled through their circle. One of Mother's friends added, "Victoria, you've been so patient. I would have insisted on therapy years ago." "The uniform is a bit much for a wedding," another woman commented. "So attention-seeking." "That's our Samantha," Father chuckled. "Always had to be different. Couldn't just be successful in normal ways like her sister." The words landed like physical blows. I'd commanded troops in combat, made life-or-death decisions, and shaped national security strategy at the highest levels. Yet here, in this bastion of privilege, my service was reduced to an immature phase, a costume, a failure to launch. For a moment, I was that awkward teenager again, desperate for approval I'd never receive. The room seemed to tilt slightly, the familiar sensation of being an outsider in my own family washing over me. I stood up, determined to leave with whatever dignity remained. As I moved toward the exit, a sudden hush fell over the room. The band stopped playing mid-song. I turned to see what had caused the interruption and found myself facing the groom, James, standing at attention. Behind him, 5 men in expensive suits had also straightened to perfect military posture. Before I could process what was happening, James snapped a perfect, regulation salute. "Major General Wilson, ma'am. It's an honor to have you present at our wedding." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. I automatically returned the salute, muscle memory taking over while my brain struggled to catch up. "Lieutenant Colonel James Anderson, U.S. Army Intelligence. I served under your command during Operation Falcon Shield in Kandahar Province, 2018. Recognition dawned as I looked more closely at his face, now seeing beyond the civilian haircut and wedding attire. "Anderson, you were the team lead on the Eastern Sector Intelligence Unit." "Yes, ma'am." His eyes held sincere respect. "Your tactical assessment and quick decision-making saved my entire unit when our position was compromised. 26 soldiers made it home to their families because of your call that day." The men behind him stepped forward, each offering a precise salute. "Captain Michael Ramirez, ma'am. Your intelligence brief in Baghdad identified the hidden weapons cache that would have taken out our convoy." "Lieutenant David Walsh. Your emergency extraction plan in Mosul got my wounded team out when we were surrounded." One by one, they identified themselves, all officers who had served under my command or benefited from operations I'd led. Each had a story of lives saved through my decisions. I glanced toward my parents, who stood frozen in confusion, champagne glasses suspended midair as their social certainties crumbled around them. Nearby guests were whispering urgently, phones appearing as people searched my name online. I apologize for not recognizing you earlier, ma'am, James continued. When Heather mentioned her sister was in the Army, she didn't specify your rank or position. It wasn't until I saw you in uniform today that I realized Major General Samantha Wilson was my fiancé's sister. Heather had stepped forward, her expression a complex mixture of embarrassment and dawning realization. James, you know Samantha? Know her? James turned to his bride with an incredulous laugh. Heather, your sister is a legend in military intelligence circles. The operation she led last year is already being taught at West Point as a textbook example of next-generation warfare. The murmurs in the room grew louder as reality rearranged itself. My father took an unsteady step forward, looking between James and me as though seeing both of us for the first time. You're military? He asked James, his voice faint. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Colonel, Army Intelligence. Currently assigned to Pentagon Strategic Operations after 3 combat deployments. James's tone was respectful but firm. I assumed you knew, given the general's position in the same branch. Mother had gone very pale, her social armor cracking visibly as she struggled to reconcile her dismissive narrative with the reality unfolding before her guests. I don't understand, Father said, looking genuinely bewildered. You work in international finance. James exchanged glances with Heather, whose expression confirmed my suspicion. She had deliberately misrepresented his career to our parents. I'm stationed at the Pentagon, sir, working in military intelligence with a focus on international security threats, James explained carefully. My work involves international matters, but not finance. The other military men had spread throughout the reception, and I could hear them explaining to curious guests about my role and achievements. Phrases like youngest female major general and presidential commendation floated across the ballroom. General Wilson's strategic framework for counterterrorism operations literally rewrote the manual we all use. Captain Ramirez was telling a cluster of my father's business associates, who were listening with rapt attention. The Wilson Doctrine, they call it at the War College. She was nominated for the Distinguished Service Medal after the Kandahar operation, Lieutenant Walsh added to another group. Her intelligence assessment prevented what could have been the worst military disaster of the decade. James turned back to me. General, I've wanted to thank you properly for years. Your tactical decision in Kandahar saved not just my life, but the lives of everyone under my command. We were completely exposed until your team identified the enemy positions and created that diversion strategy. A distinguished-looking older man approached, introducing himself as Senator Harrison. General Wilson, I had no idea Alexander and Victoria's daughter was the same Wilson who briefed the Senate Intelligence Committee last year. Your analysis of emerging threats was extraordinary. My parents stood paralyzed as their carefully constructed social narrative imploded around them. The daughter they had dismissed as playing soldier was being treated with profound respect by people whose opinion they valued most, military leaders, business executives, and political figures. Heather made her way to my side, her expression unreadable. Sam, I had no idea about any of this. You never asked, I replied simply. James talks about his commanding officer from Kandahar sometimes, the brilliant strategist who saved their unit. I never connected that it might be you. Her voice held a note of genuine shock. Why didn't you ever tell us what you really do? I tried. For years. You and Mom and Dad didn't want to hear it. A small crowd had gathered around us, hanging on every word of this family drama unfolding amid wedding champagne and cake. James rejoined us with a respectful nod to me before taking Heather's hand. When Heather mentioned her sister was in the Army, I asked questions, but she didn't know much about your service. I thought it was strange, but assumed you might be in different branches or didn't talk much. We don't, I confirmed. I told my military friends you'd be here, James continued. Several of us served under your command or benefited from your operations. We've wanted to thank you properly, outside official channels. Mother had recovered enough composure to approach, her social smile strained but intact. Samantha, darling, you should have told us about your important position. We've always been so proud of your dedication. The transparent attempt at saving face might have worked in her social circle under normal circumstances, but the disconnect between her previous comments and current claim was too stark. Mrs. Wilson, James said with polite firmness, your daughter has the highest security clearance in the military. Her work directly protects American lives and national security interests. The operations she oversees are changing the nature of modern warfare. Father joined us, looking uncomfortable but making an effort. Well, this is certainly unexpected. Samantha, it seems you've done quite well for yourself in your chosen field. Their attempts at reconciliation felt hollow after years of dismissal, but before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. General Hayden, my direct superior and the Army Chief of Staff, walked in with his wife. James immediately stood at attention, as did the other military personnel in the room. At ease, General Hayden said, then spotted me. Wilson, thought I'd stop by since I was in the area for the governor's security briefing. Hope you don't mind the intrusion. Not at all, sir, I managed, shocked by his appearance. Colonel Anderson mentioned he was marrying your sister. Thought I'd come congratulate them both. He turned to my shell-shocked parents. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson? General Hayden. Your daughter is one of our finest officers. The president specifically mentioned her work during last month's Security Council meeting. Mother's composure finally cracked. The president knows Samantha? Of course, General Hayden replied, seeming puzzled by the question. She briefed him directly after the Jakarta situation last month. Brilliant analysis, as always. The reception had transformed entirely. Where I had been seated at the furthest table, I now found myself surrounded by guests eager to hear about my work. Young women approached asking about military career paths. Father's business associates discussed international security issues, treating me as an authority rather than an oddity. Heather pulled me aside during a brief lull. I'm so sorry, Sam, she whispered, eyes brimming with tears. I didn't understand. I just accepted what Mom and Dad always said about your career. You could have asked, I pointed out. In 7 years, you never once asked what I actually do. I know, she admitted. I think I was jealous, in a way. You escaped and made your own life. I stayed and became exactly what they wanted. And are you happy? I asked. Her eyes drifted to James, who was deep in conversation with his military colleagues. I love him. That part's real. But I think I've been living in a bubble our parents created. Seeing you tonight, seeing how James respects you, it's making me question a lot of things. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was perhaps the first honest conversation we'd had as adults. ## Part 8, Resolution and Life Lessons. The remainder of the reception unfolded like an alternate reality. Where I had been invisible, I was now the center of respectful attention. Where my uniform had been seen as an embarrassing costume, it was now recognized as the symbol of achievement it truly was. My parents attempted to navigate this shifted landscape, oscillating between claiming they'd always supported my career and expressing shocked discovery of my actual accomplishments. Neither approach was particularly convincing, but I recognized their efforts as the beginning of a long-overdue adjustment. After the final guests departed, our family gathered in the country club's private lounge. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until Father finally spoke. I think we owe you an apology, Samantha. It seems we've underestimated the significance of your military service. That's putting it mildly, I replied, too emotionally drained for anything but honesty. You've spent my entire adult life treating my career as an embarrassment. Mother fidgeted with her pearl necklace. We simply didn't understand. The military seemed so foreign to our world. You never tried to understand, I countered. You decided my choices didn't fit your narrative, so you rewrote them into something you could dismiss. Heather and James sat quietly, witnessing this long-overdue confrontation. Perhaps we were wrong, father admitted, the words seeming to physically pain him. It appears you've achieved considerable success and respect. Not perhaps, Dad. You were wrong. Not about whether my career meets your definition of success, but about your right to define success for me at all. The conversation continued late into the night, painful, honest, and necessary. There were no tearful embraces or instantaneous healing of decades of dismissal. Instead, there was the beginning of understanding, fragile and tentative. 2 days later, I returned to my command with mixed emotions. The wedding had forced a reckoning, but real change would require sustained effort from all sides. I didn't expect miracles, but I hoped for progress. It came slowly. A month after the wedding, my parents called to ask genuine questions about my work, the first time they'd shown real interest. Heather and James visited my base, allowing my sister to finally see the world I inhabited and the respect I commanded there. 6 months later, I invited my parents to attend a formal military ceremony where I was receiving another commendation. To my surprise, they came. Father sat uncomfortably in his civilian suit among decorated officers, but he came. Mother asked awkward but sincere questions about military protocol. I'm trying to understand your world better, she admitted afterward. It's very different from what I imagined. The healing wasn't perfect or complete. Years of dismissal had created wounds that wouldn't disappear with a few months of effort. But there was progress, genuine attempts to bridge the gap between their expectations and my reality. Perhaps the most meaningful change came in my relationship with Heather. Free from our parents' comparative framework, we began building a relationship based on who we actually were, not who we'd been told to be. She confessed how she'd been taught to view my choices as failures rather than alternatives, and how seeing me through James's eyes had forced her to reconsider everything. I spent my whole life being the good daughter, she told me during one visit. I never questioned whether the path they laid out was actually good for me. As for me, I learned that while family validation was not necessary for my success, reconciliation offered its own kind of peace. I'd built my career and identity without their approval, but there was healing in having it finally acknowledged, however belatedly. The most important lesson, though, was one I shared with young officers under my command. Your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. External validation is nice, but internal conviction is essential. I became a general not because my family believed I could, but because I knew I could, and then did the work to prove it. True respect, I've learned, must be earned through actions, not demanded through relationships. My stars weren't handed to me because of my name or connections. They were earned through intelligence, courage, and leadership. The recognition at my sister's wedding didn't make those achievements more real. It simply brought them into a world that had refused to see them. Today, my relationship with my family continues to evolve. There are still awkward moments and old patterns that emerge under stress. But there's also new understanding and respect, hard-won and therefore more valuable. Have you ever had your achievements dismissed by those who should have celebrated them? Did you ever experience that satisfying moment when they finally had to acknowledge your success? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of family, recognition, and resilience resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Remember, sometimes the people who understand your value aren't the ones who share your DNA, and that's perfectly okay. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find validation in your own path, whatever it may be.